Grace Mitchell adjusted her cleaning supplies as she walked through the marble hallways of the Harrington mansion. The grand estate spoke of wealth beyond imagination, with crystal chandeliers hanging from high ceilings and priceless artwork adorning every wall. She had been working there for only 2 weeks, keeping her head down and doing her job quietly. The evening sun cast long shadows through the tall windows as Grace approached the study to clean. She heard voices inside and paused, not wanting to interrupt what sounded like an important meeting. But something in the tone made her stop completely. The voice belonged to Thomas Bennett, Vincent's most trusted advisor for over 10 years. "The documents are ready," Thomas said, his voice cold and calculated. "Once Vincent signs tomorrow, everything transfers to our offshore accounts. He will be left with nothing but debt and legal troubles." Grace felt her heart racing. She pressed herself against the wall, hidden behind a large decorative column. Another voice responded, one she recognized as Catherine Wells, Vincent's former fiancée who had left him 3 years ago. "Are you certain he suspects nothing?" Catherine asked. "Vincent trusts me completely. He built his empire on that trust. Tomorrow we destroy him with it," Thomas laughed quietly. "The authorities will find evidence of fraud in his accounts. By the time he realizes what happened, we will be in another country with his fortune." Grace knew she had to move before they discovered her. She quietly retreated down the hallway, her mind spinning with what she had just heard. This was not just business rivalry. This was calculated destruction of a man who had apparently done nothing wrong except trust the people closest to him. The weight of secrets back in the staff quarters, Grace sat on her small bed, trembling. She stared at her phone, wondering what to do with this information. Most people would think she was lying, trying to get attention or money from a wealthy man. But Grace knew something about betrayal that others could not understand. 5 years ago, her own family business had been destroyed in a similar scheme. Her father, a successful restaurant owner, had trusted his business partner completely. That partner had stolen everything, framed her father for tax fraud, and disappeared with all their money. Her father's heart could not handle the stress and betrayal. He passed away before his name could be cleared. Grace had spent years learning about financial fraud, studying how these schemes worked, hoping to prevent others from experiencing her family's pain. She had taken this housekeeping position deliberately, having heard rumors about suspicious activities around Vincent's company. She never expected to stumble upon an active conspiracy. She looked at the time. It was nearly 8 in the evening. Vincent would be in his private office reviewing documents for tomorrow's crucial meeting. Grace made her decision. She would warn him, even if it cost her this job, even if he did not believe her. An unlikely conversation. Grace knocked softly on the office door. Vincent's voice called out, "Come in." She entered to find him surrounded by papers, his dark hair slightly disheveled from running his hands through it. He looked up, surprised to see one of the housekeeping staff at this hour. "Yes, can I help you?" Vincent asked, his tone polite but distracted. "Mr. Harrington, I need to speak with you about something urgent," Grace said, keeping her voice steady despite her nervousness. Vincent set down his pen and gave her his full attention. "What is it? Please do not sign any documents tomorrow. There is a plan to steal your company and frame you for fraud." The words came out in a rush. Vincent's expression shifted from curiosity to confusion. "Excuse me? What are you talking about?" Grace took a deep breath and explained what she had overheard. As she spoke, she watched Vincent's face carefully. Doubt flickered across his features, but also something else. "Concern, perhaps. Do you understand what you are saying?" Vincent stood up, his tall frame suddenly imposing. "Thomas Bennett has been my advisor and friend since I started this company. Catherine and I have history, yes, but she would not do something like this." "I know how this sounds," Grace said quietly. "I know you have no reason to believe me, but I heard them clearly. Tomorrow at the meeting, they expect you to sign documents that will transfer everything to hidden accounts." Vincent studied her face intently. "Why would you tell me this?" "You could lose your job for making such accusations." "Because I know what it feels like to lose everything to people you trust," Grace replied, her voice catching slightly. "My father went through the same thing. It killed him. If there is even a small chance I can prevent that from happening to someone else, I have to try." Seeds of doubt. Vincent walked to the window, looking out at the sprawling gardens below. Grace waited, unsure if he would call security or listen further. "What is your name?" he asked without turning around. "Grace Mitchell, sir." "How long have you worked here, Grace?" 2 weeks. Vincent turned to face her. "And in 2 weeks you have formed an opinion about my business advisor and decided he is betraying me?" "I formed an opinion based on what I heard them planning," Grace corrected gently. "Mr. Harrington, I have studied financial fraud extensively. The scheme they described follows a classic pattern. They plant false evidence, create paper trails that lead to you, then trigger an investigation at precisely the right moment." Something in her knowledge seemed to catch Vincent's attention. "You studied financial fraud? That seems unusual for someone in housekeeping." Grace hesitated, then decided honesty was her only path forward. "I took this position to investigate suspicious activities I heard about regarding your company. I lost my family to a similar scheme. I wanted to help if I could, though I never expected to discover an actual conspiracy." Vincent's eyes widened slightly. "So you are not really here to clean?" "I am here to clean, and I do that job properly," Grace said firmly. "But yes, I had another purpose. I apologize for the deception, but my intentions were to protect, not harm." The office fell silent except for the ticking of an antique clock on the wall. Vincent moved back to his desk and picked up one of the documents he had been reviewing. "These are the contracts for tomorrow," he said slowly. "Thomas prepared them personally. He assured me everything was in order." He looked up at Grace. "If what you say is true, what would you suggest I do?" Grace felt a spark of hope. He was listening. "Do not sign anything until an independent lawyer reviews every document. Look for unusual clauses about fund transfers or authority delegations. Check for accounts you do not recognize," Vincent nodded slowly. "And if I find nothing wrong, if you are mistaken, then I will accept whatever consequences you decide," Grace said. "But if I am right, you need to act carefully. They cannot know you suspect anything, or they will disappear before you can prove their guilt." Vincent studied the documents in front of him with new eyes, seeing potential dangers where he had seen only routine business before. Grace had planted a seed of doubt that he could not ignore, no matter how much he wanted to trust his old friend. "Stay here," Vincent finally said. "Tell me everything you heard, every detail you can remember. If there is even a chance you are right, I need to know exactly what I am facing." Grace pulled up a chair and began recounting the conversation word by word, while Vincent listened with growing concern. Neither of them noticed how late the night had grown, or how this unexpected meeting would change both their lives forever. The clock struck midnight as Grace finished explaining everything she had heard. Vincent sat across from her, his expression grave. He had filled several pages with notes, circling names and connecting details that painted an increasingly disturbing picture. "You mentioned you studied financial fraud," Vincent said, leaning back in his chair. "That seems like more than casual interest." Grace met his gaze steadily. "After my father died, I spent 3 years working with fraud investigators. I obtained certifications in forensic accounting and corporate security. I needed to understand how people like his partner operated, how they manipulated systems and destroyed lives." Vincent raised an eyebrow. "And you chose to work as housekeeping staff with those qualifications?" "People talk freely around housekeepers," Grace explained. "We become invisible. They discuss confidential matters as if we are not even there. It is the perfect position for gathering information without raising suspicion." "That is remarkably calculated," Vincent observed, though his tone held admiration rather than criticism. Grace smiled faintly. "I learned from painful experience. When my father tried to fight back openly, they destroyed him faster. Sometimes the best approach is the quiet one." Vincent stood and walked to a wall safe hidden behind a painting. He entered a code and pulled out a folder. "These are backup copies of all my financial records. I keep them separate from what Thomas has access to. If you truly have expertise in this area, I want you to review them. Look for anything that seems wrong." Grace took the folder, surprised by his sudden trust. "You believe me now?" "I am not sure what I believe yet," Vincent admitted. "But you risked your position here to warn me. That suggests either genuine concern or an elaborate scheme of your own. Given what you have told me about your background, I am inclined to think it is the former." Uncovering the web over the next several hours, Grace and Vincent worked side by side in his office. She spread the financial documents across his large desk, her trained eye scanning for irregularities. Vincent watched her work, impressed by her methodical approach and clear understanding of complex financial structures. Here, Grace pointed to a series of transactions from 6 months ago. These transfers look routine, but the routing numbers are unusual. They pass through 3 intermediary banks before reaching the final destination. That is a common tactic for obscuring money trails. Vincent leaned closer to examine the documents. Thomas handled those transfers personally. He said they were for international investments. Did you verify the investment accounts existed? Grace asked. Vincent's silence answered her question. Grace pulled out her laptop and began tracing the routing numbers through various financial databases. Within 20 minutes, she had mapped out a network of shell companies, each one leading deeper into a maze of false identities and offshore accounts. This is sophisticated, Grace said, her voice tight with anger. They have been siphoning money from your company for at least 8 months, maybe longer. The amounts were small enough to avoid immediate detection, but they add up to millions. Vincent felt his chest tighten. Thomas has been stealing from me for that long? Building the framework for tomorrow's bigger theft, Grace clarified. These smaller transfers established the pattern. When the authorities investigate after you supposedly commit fraud, they will find months of evidence pointing to your guilt. The fact that you never noticed these transfers will make you look either complicit or incompetent. Vincent slammed his hand on the desk, making Grace jump slightly. I trusted him completely. We started this company together. I gave him access to everything because I believed in our friendship. Grace placed a gentle hand on his arm. That is what people like him count on. They weaponize trust and loyalty. My father made the same mistake. He loved his partner like a brother, which made the betrayal even more devastating. Their eyes met, and for a moment, the anger in Vincent's face softened. He saw in Grace not just someone trying to help him, but someone who truly understood the pain of betrayal. Catherine's return, a knock on the office door, broke the moment. Before either could respond, the door opened and Catherine Wells walked in. She was stunning as always, with perfectly styled blonde hair and an expensive designer dress. Her eyes widened in calculated surprise when she saw Grace sitting so close to Vincent among scattered financial documents. Vincent, darling, I did not expect to find you working so late, Catherine said, her voice honey-sweet. And with company, I see. Vincent stood, his expression carefully neutral. Catherine, what are you doing here at this hour? Thomas mentioned you might need support before the big meeting tomorrow, she replied, moving closer. Her eyes swept over Grace dismissively. I thought I would check on you. Should the staff not be finished with their duties by now? Grace began gathering the documents, but Vincent stopped her with a gesture. Grace is helping me review some financial matters. Her expertise has proven quite valuable. Catherine's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. Expertise? How unusual for housekeeping staff. Grace has a background in forensic accounting, Vincent said, watching Catherine's reaction carefully. She has been helping me understand some irregularities in recent transactions. The color drained slightly from Catherine's face before she recovered her composure. Irregularities? Vincent, you should discuss such things with Thomas. He handles all your financial affairs. Perhaps that is part of the problem, Vincent replied coolly. Catherine laughed, but it sounded forced. Surely you are not taking accusations from a maid seriously? Vincent, this is absurd. Thomas has been loyal to you for years. How did you know there were accusations? Grace asked quietly. Mr. Harrington only mentioned irregularities. Catherine's eyes flashed with anger before she masked it. I simply assumed. Why else would you be reviewing finances with a staff member in the middle of the night? Vincent moved to stand beside Grace, a subtle but clear positioning. Catherine, I think you should leave. We have work to finish before tomorrow's meeting. You are making a terrible mistake, Catherine said, her pleasant facade cracking. Thomas has sacrificed everything for this company. If you listen to some nobody with wild theories, you will destroy everything you have built. The only thing being destroyed is the trust I once had, Vincent responded firmly. Please go, Catherine. After she left, slamming the door behind her, Grace let out a breath she had been holding. She will warn Thomas immediately. They know you are suspicious now, Vincent nodded grimly. Then we need to move faster than they can react. The personal stake as dawn approached, Grace and Vincent had compiled extensive evidence of the fraud scheme. The picture was clear and damning. Thomas had been systematically positioning Vincent for a catastrophic fall while enriching himself and Catherine. Why did she leave you 3 years ago? Grace asked as they organized their findings. Vincent was quiet for a moment. She said I was too focused on work, that I did not give her enough attention. The truth is, she wanted access to more of the company's finances, wanted to be involved in major decisions. When I refused, saying I wanted to keep business and personal life separate, she left. She was already planning this back then, Grace realized. She left to make the relationship appear over, to remove herself as a suspect when everything collapsed. Then she could return, play the supportive ex, and no one would connect her to Thomas's actions. Vincent looked at Grace with new appreciation. You see patterns I completely missed. How did you become so good at this? Grace's expression turned sad. Necessity and pain are powerful teachers. After my father died, I became obsessed with understanding how he was manipulated. I studied every case I could find, learned from investigators, attended trials. It consumed me for years. Did it help? Vincent asked gently. Did all that knowledge make the pain less? No, Grace admitted. But it gave me purpose. I could not save my father, but maybe I could save others. When I heard rumors about suspicious activity around your company, I knew I had to investigate. I never expected to find an active scheme, and I certainly never expected to meet someone who would actually listen to me. Vincent reached across the desk and took her hand. I am grateful you were here. Without your warning, I would have walked into their trap tomorrow completely blind. They would have taken everything. Grace felt warmth spread through her at his touch. Over the long night working together, she had seen beyond the wealthy businessman to the decent man beneath. He treated her as an equal, valued her expertise, and showed genuine concern for her well-being. It was unexpected and deeply affecting. What happens now? Grace asked softly. Now we set our own trap, Vincent said, determination hardening his features. Thomas and Catherine think they hold all the cards. Tomorrow we show them they were wrong. As they prepared their strategy for the meeting, Grace found herself drawn to Vincent in ways that went beyond their shared purpose. He was brilliant and focused, but also showed moments of vulnerability that made him human. When he spoke about feeling betrayed by Thomas, the pain in his voice resonated with her own experiences. Vincent seemed equally affected by Grace's presence. He kept finding reasons to move closer, to ask her opinion, to share small details about his life that had nothing to do with business. When their hands touched while reaching for the same document, neither pulled away immediately. Grace? Vincent said as the first light of dawn appeared through the windows. Regardless of what happens tomorrow, I want you to know that meeting you has been the most remarkable part of this entire situation. You came into my life as a warning, but you have become something much more important. Grace felt her heart race. What do you mean? I mean that somewhere between midnight and dawn, between financial documents and conspiracy theories, I started seeing you not as someone trying to save my company, but as someone I do not want to lose from my life. Grace knew she should maintain professional distance, should focus on the task ahead. But looking into Vincent's eyes, seeing the sincerity there, she could not deny her own growing feelings. We barely know each other, she whispered. I know you risked everything to help a stranger, Vincent replied. I know you carry pain from your past but use it to protect others. I know that in one night you have shown me more loyalty than people I have known for years. That seems like a good beginning. Before Grace could respond, Vincent's phone buzzed with a message. His expression darkened as he read it. Thomas, he said, confirming our meeting time and asking if I reviewed the documents. He suspects nothing. Grace stood, forcing herself back to the immediate problem. Then we proceed as planned. You attend the meeting, act normal, and when he presents the fraudulent documents, we reveal what we know. Vincent nodded, but his eyes held a question. After this is over, after we deal with Thomas and Catherine, will you stay? Not as housekeeping staff, but as someone important to both my company and my life. Grace smiled despite the nervous energy coursing through her. Let us survive today first. Then we can discuss tomorrow. As they prepared to face the betrayal waiting for them, both knew that whatever happened in the meeting ahead, something profound had changed between them in the quiet hours of that long night. The morning sun streamed through the tall windows of the Harrington Industries conference room. Vincent sat at the head of the polished mahogany table, his expression calm and composed. Thomas Bennett entered with a leather briefcase, his confident smile showing no hint of the treachery he was about to commit. "Good morning, Vincent," Thomas said warmly, settling into his usual seat. "Ready for the biggest day of our careers?" "Absolutely," Vincent replied smoothly. "I have been looking forward to this." Catherine arrived moments later, playing her role perfectly. She greeted Vincent with a kiss on the cheek and took a seat near Thomas, maintaining the appearance of casual friendship rather than conspiracy. Grace watched from a small office adjacent to the conference room through a one-way mirror Vincent had shown her earlier. She wore a wireless earpiece, ready to provide guidance if needed. Her laptop displayed the evidence they had compiled, and her phone was ready to contact authorities at the right moment. Thomas opened his briefcase and pulled out a thick stack of documents. "These are the final contracts for the merger. Once you sign, Harrington Industries will expand into 12 new international markets. The projected revenue increase is substantial." Vincent took the documents, appearing to review them casually. In reality, he was looking for the specific clauses Grace had identified. There, buried in the legal language on page 47, was the clause that would transfer signing authority over all company accounts to Thomas. Another clause on page 63 established offshore holdings in Vincent's name, accounts he had never opened. "This is impressive work, Thomas," Vincent said. "You have really thought of everything," Thomas beamed with pride, not recognizing the double meaning in those words. "I have been planning this for a very long time, my friend. This will change everything for us." "Indeed it will," Vincent agreed. He set down the documents without signing. "Actually, before we proceed, I have some questions about these international accounts listed here. When were these established?" Thomas's smile flickered slightly. "Those are the new holdings for the merger. Standard procedure for international expansion. Strange," Vincent said mildly. "They are listed as existing accounts under my name, but I do not recall opening them." "Perhaps you could help me understand the timeline." Catherine shifted in her seat, her hand moving to her phone. Grace immediately sent a text to Vincent that he had programmed to appear as a calendar reminder. He glanced at it and nodded slightly. "Catherine, please put your phone away," Vincent said pleasantly. "This conversation requires everyone's full attention." The mask slips. Thomas's expression hardened. "Vincent, what exactly are you implying?" "I am implying that these documents are designed to transfer control of my company while framing me for financial fraud," Vincent stated calmly. "I am implying that you and Catherine have been planning this betrayal for years." The room fell into tense silence. Thomas recovered quickly, forcing a laugh. "That is absurd. Where did you get such a ridiculous idea?" "From someone who actually cares about my well-being," Vincent replied. "Unlike my trusted advisor of 10 years, who has been systematically stealing from me for months." Catherine stood abruptly. "We do not have to listen to this." "Come on, Thomas!" "Sit down, Catherine," Vincent commanded, his voice carrying an authority neither had heard before. "You are not leaving until we discuss the shell companies, the offshore accounts, and the convenient timing of your return into my life." Thomas's facade completely crumbled. His friendly expression transformed into something cold and calculating. "You think you are so clever, Vincent? You have no proof of anything. Those are legitimate business transactions." "Actually, we have extensive proof," Grace said, stepping into the conference room. She carried her laptop and a folder of printed documents. Thomas stared at her with sudden recognition. "You, the cleaning woman who was snooping around my office." "Forensic accountant," Grace corrected, setting her laptop on the table. "And I was not snooping. I was investigating. There is a difference." She opened her laptop and turned it so everyone could see the screen. It displayed a complete map of the fraudulent transactions, the shell companies, and the paper trail that led directly to Thomas and Catherine. 8 months ago, you began moving small amounts of money through intermediary banks, Grace explained, her voice professional and clear. You established patterns that would later be attributed to Vincent. You created false documentation suggesting he was hiding assets and evading taxes. Then today, you planned to have him sign documents that would complete the transfer of his wealth while triggering an investigation that would destroy his reputation and freedom. Thomas's face reddened with anger. Who do you think you are? You are nothing. A nobody who cleans floors. I am someone who lost her father to people exactly like you, Grace replied quietly. And I promised myself I would never let it happen to anyone else if I could prevent it. Catherine moved toward the door, but Vincent pressed a button on his phone. 2 security guards entered and positioned themselves at the exits. You are not leaving yet, Vincent said. The authorities are on their way. They will want to discuss wire fraud, embezzlement, conspiracy, and attempted extortion. Grace's sacrifice Thomas suddenly lunged across the table, grabbing Grace's laptop and throwing it against the wall. It shattered, pieces scattering across the floor. That was our only copy of the evidence, Thomas snarled triumphantly. Without it, you have nothing but theories. Grace remained calm. That laptop contained a copy. The original files are secured in 3 separate locations, including with the district attorney's office. We submitted everything an hour ago. The color drained from Thomas's face. Catherine sank back into her chair, the reality of their situation finally settling in. Why? Vincent asked Thomas, genuine pain in his voice. We built this company together. I gave you everything. Why betray me? Thomas laughed bitterly. You gave me everything? You gave me a title and a salary while you took all the glory. Every article, every award, every success was credited to Vincent Harrington, the brilliant entrepreneur. I was always just your advisor, your number 2. I deserved to be the one in charge. So you decided to destroy me instead of simply starting your own company? Vincent shook his head in disbelief. Destroying you was the point, Catherine interjected, her voice venomous. You rejected me, Vincent. You chose your precious company over a future with me. I wanted you to lose everything, like you made me feel I had lost everything. Grace moved closer to Vincent, standing beside him in a gesture of support. You both built your revenge on lies and theft. You hurt innocent people to satisfy your own egos. That is not strength, that is cowardice. Thomas suddenly pulled a gun from his briefcase. The security guards immediately drew their weapons, but Thomas pointed his gun at Grace. Everyone stays back, Thomas ordered, his voice desperate now. Vincent, you're going to sign those documents or I will shoot her. Vincent stepped in front of Grace instinctively. Thomas, do not be foolish. This room is monitored. You cannot escape. Maybe not, Thomas agreed, his hand shaking. But I can make sure you suffer for ruining everything. Grace gently pushed Vincent aside and stepped forward, facing Thomas directly. You want to shoot someone? Shoot me. But it will not change anything. The evidence is already with the authorities. Vincent's company is safe. All you will accomplish is adding murder to your charges. Grace. No. Vincent reached for her, but she held up her hand. Mr. Bennett, Grace said softly, I understand feeling overlooked and undervalued. My father felt that way when his partner betrayed him. But he chose to fight back legally, with integrity. Violence only compounds the damage. Please put the gun down. For a long moment, Thomas stood frozen, the gun wavering in his grip. Then the conference room doors burst open, and police officers flooded in with weapons drawn. Drop the weapon, they commanded. Thomas looked around at the officers, at Vincent and Grace standing together, at Catherine crying in her chair. Slowly, he lowered the gun and placed it on the table. Officers immediately moved in, handcuffing both Thomas and Catherine. The revelation as. The police led Thomas and Catherine away. One of the officers approached Vincent and Grace. We will need full statements from both of you. The district attorney wants to move quickly on this case given the evidence you provided. After the officers left to secure the scene, Vincent turned to Grace. You stepped in front of a gun for me. You could have been killed. So could you, Grace pointed out. You tried to shield me first. Vincent pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly. When I saw that gun pointed at you, I realized something. This company, this wealth, none of it matters compared to losing you. I would give it all away if it meant keeping you safe. Grace looked up at him, tears in her eyes. Vincent, we have only known each other for one day. The most important day of my life, he replied. Grace, you saved me from losing everything. But more than that, you showed me what true loyalty and courage look like. You risked your safety for a stranger because you understood pain and wanted to prevent mine. I did it because it was right, Grace whispered. You did it because you have the most beautiful heart I have ever encountered, Vincent said. He cupped her face gently. I know this is fast. I know we have only shared one incredible, terrifying night together. But I also know that I do not want to face another day without you in my life. A new beginning. 3 months later, Grace stood in Vincent's office, but this time not as housekeeping staff or a forensic consultant. She held the title of Chief Security Officer for Harrington Industries, a position Vincent had created specifically for her expertise. The legal proceedings against Thomas and Catherine were moving forward. The evidence Grace had compiled proved overwhelming. Thomas faced 20 years in prison for fraud, embezzlement, and attempted murder. Catherine received a lighter sentence after cooperating with prosecutors, but her reputation was destroyed. Vincent had restructured his entire company, implementing security measures and oversight protocols that Grace designed. They worked together daily, their professional partnership deepening alongside their personal relationship. Mr. Harrington, his assistant announced over the intercom. Your 4 o'clock appointment is here. Vincent smiled at Grace. That would be the reporter from Business Journal. They want to do a story about how we uncovered the fraud, Grace groaned. Do we have to do another interview? I preferred being invisible. You are far too remarkable to stay invisible, Vincent said, pulling her close. Besides, your story inspires people. A woman who lost everything to fraud became an expert who saves others from the same fate. That is powerful. The reporter, a professional woman named Jennifer, entered with a photographer. She set up her recording device and smiled warmly at them. Thank you for agreeing to this interview, Jennifer began. Mr. Harrington, Ms. Mitchell, your story has captured public attention. A housekeeping staff member who saved a billionaire from financial ruin. It sounds like something from a movie, Vincent laughed. It felt like a movie while we were living it. But Grace was never just housekeeping staff. She was an expert investigator who used that position strategically. Ms. Mitchell, Jennifer turned to Grace, what made you risk your position and potentially your safety to warn someone you barely knew? Grace considered the question carefully. I lost my father to a similar scheme. I saw how betrayal by trusted partners destroyed not just his business but his spirit. When I overheard the conspiracy against Vincent, I could not stay silent. Yes, he was wealthy and powerful, but that did not make the betrayal less painful or the danger less real. And now you are the chief security officer, Jennifer noted. That is quite a promotion. It is the right position for her skills, Vincent interjected. Grace has implemented security measures that have already prevented 2 other attempted frauds. She is revolutionizing how we think about corporate security. Jennifer leaned forward with interest. There are also rumors about your personal relationship. Can you confirm that you are engaged? Vincent and Grace exchanged glances. Vincent reached into his desk drawer and pulled out a small velvet box. Grace's eyes widened in surprise. Actually, Vincent said, opening the box to reveal a stunning diamond ring. I was planning to ask her right now. Grace's hands flew to her mouth as tears filled her eyes. Vincent knelt beside her chair. Grace Mitchell, you came into my life as a warning, but you became my salvation. You showed me that true wealth is not measured in money or power, but in the courage to do what is right and the strength to trust again. You taught me that love can grow in the most unexpected places, between 2 people who understand pain and choose hope anyway. Will you marry me? Yes, Grace whispered, then louder. Yes, absolutely yes. As Vincent slipped the ring on her finger, the photographer captured the moment. Jennifer wiped away her own tears. This is beautiful, Jennifer said. A real love story that began with danger and ended with hope. Not ended, Grace corrected, looking at Vincent with love shining in her eyes. This is just the beginning. Grace and Vincent stood together on the balcony of their new home, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and pink. They had married in a small, intimate ceremony, attended only by close friends and Grace's mother, who had flown in from across the country. The company had grown stronger under their combined leadership. Vincent handled the business strategy while Grace ensured every transaction, every partnership, and every employee underwent thorough vetting. Together, they had created something neither could have built alone. "Do you ever regret it?" Grace asked suddenly. "Taking a chance on someone you barely knew?" Vincent pulled her closer. "Every single day." Grace looked up at him in surprise and concern. He smiled. "I regret that I did not meet you sooner. I regret the years I wasted trusting the wrong people. But taking a chance on you? That was the best decision I ever made." "Even though I was just a maid when we met?" Grace teased. "You were never just a maid," Vincent said seriously. "You were my guardian angel disguised as housekeeping staff. You were the answer to a prayer I did not know I needed to make." Grace thought about her journey from devastating loss to unexpected love. Her father would have liked Vincent, she realized. He would have approved of a man who valued integrity and loyalty above wealth. "My father used to say that treasures come in unexpected packages," Grace said softly. "I think he would be happy to know I found my treasure in the most unlikely place." "And I found mine," Vincent replied, kissing her forehead. "In a brave woman who risked everything for a stranger and taught me that love is the greatest fortune of all." They stood together as darkness fell, two people who had survived betrayal and found each other through courage and fate. The mansion behind them represented wealth and success, but the real treasure was held between them in the love they had built from one night of danger, trust, and unexpected connection. Grace had entered Vincent's life as just the maid, but her secret, her courage, and her compassion had not just saved him. They had transformed both their lives, proving that true love recognizes no barriers of wealth or status. It simply sees two hearts brave enough to trust again. Their story became legend in business circles, not because a billionaire fell in love with his housekeeping staff, but because two wounded souls had found healing in each other. They built something stronger than a company or a fortune. They built a partnership based on mutual respect, shared values, and the kind of love that only comes from truly seeing and valuing another person. As stars appeared in the darkening sky, Vincent and Grace made their way inside, hand in hand, ready to face whatever tomorrow might bring. Together, they had overcome betrayal, danger, and doubt. Together, they would build a future worth more than any amount of money. Because in the end, Grace had been right about one thing. She was never just the maid. She was the woman who would change Vincent's life forever. And he was the man who would show her that trust and love could bloom again after devastating loss. Their story was proof that sometimes the most valuable things in life come from the most unexpected sources, and that real wealth is measured not in bank accounts, but in the courage to love despite past pain, and the wisdom to recognize a treasure when it appears, no matter what disguise it wears. The end.